Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
In essence, it was very simple to the effect that we had in our possession a flying saucer. It was found on a ranch up north of Roswell. It was being flown to General Ramey's office, that being the next higher command. That was the 8th Air Force, and that was the end of it. I meant that they put all the hunks and pieces in I think it was at that time, C-54 aircraft that they loaded up primarily with the material, and that the airplane was flown. The material was not flown. That was pretty well orchestrated. I think the thought of handling it that way came down from Washington through channels, and we were told that we were all wrong, that it was just a weather balloon. And that was the only thing that I think we heard was, well, that's the end of that story. Shouldn't have printed all that to start with, and this type of thing. These things happen when you've got a whole bunch of rank going way above you, and you're just a little first lieutenant down on the bottom of the pile. There was lots and lots of cover-up. I can't verify that. My sincere feeling is that the thing was something from outer space, and we decided that, I say we, the military decided that our public may not accept it very graciously. Something coming from outer space and hitting our own Earth, it's a little bit hard to get a lot of the people to accept it.
None of the materials that we picked up weighed anything. It looked like it was weightless. You couldn't feel that you had anything in your hands. I found one piece of metal, what looked like metal anyway. He said, there's something unusual here. He said, I tried to make a dent in this metal. He says, you can't bend it. You can't make a mark on it. He says, I took a sledgehammer and whammed it. I put it on the ground and whammed it. The sledgehammer bounced off of it. He told me not to say anything. He says, I'll handle it from now on. And that's exactly what he did. When he came out, he said, he told the press that was there, he said, that was nothing but a weather balloon, crashed weather balloon. It was definitely not a weather balloon. And it was an aircraft. So what it could have been, I wouldn't know. I still don't know.
They took pictures, of course. They had a whole flock of microphones there. They wanted me they wanted some comments from me, but I wasn't at liberty to do that. So all I could do is keep my mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who discussed, told the newspapers, the newsmen, what it was and to forget about it. It was nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, which we both knew differently. It was scattered over such a vast area. So we proceeded to pick up as much of the debris as we could, loaded in the wagon. We filled that up. It took us a good part of the day to do that, because there were such small fragments that we had to do a lot of picking. But the thing about that got me is that you couldn't even bend it, you couldn't dent it, even with a sledgehammer would bounce off of it. So I knew that I had never seen anything like that before. And as of now, I don't know what it was. It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of. Because being an intelligence officer, I was familiar with just about all materials used in aircraft and in our air travel. This is nothing like that. It could not be. It could not have been.
Well, our mortuary had the contract for all military services out at the Roswell Army Airfield. And this gentleman called and said he was a mortuary officer at the base. He needed some information. And I said, what do you need? And he said, how many hermetically sealed infant caskets do you have, 3.5, 4 foot in stock? And I said, we don't have any. How long would it take you to get them? And I said, well, I can call Amarillo by 3:30 this afternoon and have them in here in the morning. I said, what's going on? He said, that's not important. I said, well, it is important also. But anyway, all the doctors and nurses that were stationed here in that area and everything that were stationed here permanently were given orders not to report. Because my understanding and everything later on that came that the reason for that being that these were all specialists and they were all sent in from Wright-Patterson.
When you said you saw some debris, could
And
you go
then
back
when I saw that, and that's what started it. But what he really wanted to know later on, see, I knew this nurse, and she didn't get orders not to report either because she was going to join the St. Mary's Order, and our hospital was the St. Mary's. There were 2 pathologists. I understood they were from Wright-Patterson. They were not doing an autopsy. They were examining what was brought in from the Roswell crash, what we call the Roswell crash. And but the reason that she started out the door, and then they said, Lieutenant, we still have to have some help. And this is what you're going to do. And they wanted her. And so they'd take a forceps and turn a hand. She'd say 4 fragile fingers, so many centimeters, and all this kind of stuff. And she said she wasn't in there over 20 or 30 minutes at the most. And all their eyes it started burning in their skin. They were feeling it was getting real warm and real hot. So that's when they just immediately, they had no idea what they had. The 2 pathologists said there wasn't anything in the anatomy books, there wasn't anything in what our medical schools. They had never seen anything like this. And that's immediately after that they were put in these pouches, put in a hermetically sealed container and flown directly to Wright-Patterson. And it looks like what you see today, most of the little diagrams, the 4 fragile fingers and the long arm, real short joint, the large eyes. She said the heads were almost completely demolished, but they could see. They only had 2 orifices. They didn't have earlobes. They had 2 ear canals. The mouth was only about 1 inch.
A sergeant I knew very well was sergeant of the guard that night. I told him, Sarge, how's everything around here? And he said, fine, sir. I told him, they told me to be careful to watch this area because you have a sense of something sensitive here. He said, you want to see it, sir? I told him, yeah, let's go look. And I knew this sergeant, he was a master sergeant. I went back and there was 5 crates there, like 5 or 6, I think it was 5. I lifted one up and here's this body there and floating in fluid. And I looked at it about 10, 15 seconds, not much more than that. So I put it back down and I said, Sarge, come on, get out of here now. I don't want to get you in trouble. Because I'm the duty officer, I can go around, walk around here. But you might get in trouble for coming back. Just come on, let's go, come out with me. So we went out, and I told him, where did it come from, Sarge? He said, well, 5 trucks are coming through here from an airfield in New Mexico. And they're heading for Wright-Patterson Air Force. Now, in those days, there weren't all these big roads now. In those days, Route 40 was about the only cross-country route. And the route that they took was Route 40, going through Fort Riley, Kansas, and then up to Wright-Patterson Air Force. So, and I started to figure, what was that? First, I thought it was a child, because it was small. Then I looked at this head and all, right, and this was only happened in a matter of seconds. Then I put the end back down. And the head was different, the arms were spindly, the body was gray. So right at that moment, I figured, I don't know what this thing is. So like in intelligence business, I just better put it in the back of my head here and wait till maybe in the future I get corroboration so I can evaluate what it is. 10 years later, I was down there, commanded the range in New Mexico, in White Sands, the Army Missile Firing Range, in northern, not right near Trinity site, my headquarters was. So my own radar started picking up items going 3,000 to 4,000 miles an hour in this area. I had pencil beam radars which locked on a target. And the boys told me at about 3,000 or 4,000 miles an hour, quick acceleration, they'd break the lock. And that was one of the best radars we had during the time. So every time that would happen, once I notified our headquarters, they said, oh, forget it, we're not interested. So I figured I won't tell them anything anymore. So every time that would happen, I tell the boys, bring me the tapes. Because all my computers and my firing had a tape which gave the whole firing sequence, and we could check it after if anything went wrong. See? So I tell them, deliver the tapes to me personally, and I'd look them over, and yet what they told me was true. Then I left and went to Germany, and I started picking up the same things in Germany, 4,000 miles overflying Germany. Again, the pencil beam radar would lock on, and then all ones that would lock would break. Just before that, I was 4 years at the White House, and I kept getting reports there. But they were just reports. I mean, and they weren't actually cast in any sense that you put them in a file and keep them all together. They just were sporadic reports that came through. Of course, I had all the clearances, so I'd get them. Even code reports I used to get and all. And I did get one time a report that NSA was getting signals from space, which were not just space noise or or unscrambled or something you couldn't read. They were really very perfect and looked like something was guiding them. There was a real message, but we were never able to decode it. This was a very coordinated message. It wasn't space noise or jam or jumble mumble or anything like that, or just noise coming. It was a pattern. So the evaluation it might come from outer space, some beings, and I got that report when I was at the White House, because I had the NSA clearances and all. And when I came back, General Trudeau pulled me in. He had reorganized research and development from a secondary mission logistics to a very compact, good unit, about 3,000 officers, about too compact. And then I went, first when I reported in, I was a special assistant. Then he created the Foreign Technology Division about a week later and put me in charge of it. There I started getting the top secret reports. I started getting other crash reports, the artifacts I got. And by that time I established, and I visited the site here. But when I came to research and development, which was 14 years later, by the way, I inherited all these artifacts, and I inherited the reports, the top secret reports from Walter Reed Hospital. Now, Walter Reed, there was a laboratory there, which was our laboratory, and we financed. That's who did the autopsies for us. But we didn't leave any copies to them. All copies had to come back to us, because after all, it was our lab. We financed it all. So there I started getting indication, proof that a crash really happened here.
If you only had a moment to speak in open congressional hearings to discuss what happened 50 years ago, what would you say?
I say it happened, and I'd add on to that. Give us information to the young people of the world in this country. They want to hear it. They want it. Give it to them. Don't hide it and tell lies and make stories. They're not stupid. They're not young men that'll panic. In fact, my own nephew was a research director of Daco Corporation. He tells me, he says, Uncle Phil, once they tell us the truth, we're not going to panic and pull our hair out. Why do you think they'll panic? They wanted this information. They deserve it. It's their information. It doesn't belong to the Army or the Department of Defense. It's theirs. If it's classified, take the classification off and give it to them.
Who's covering it up now? I mean, is there any one organization?
Look, I always say this. Now, here's what I say. The government is so big and so vast that if you leave it alone, it'll cover itself up. So that's the answer. These are another intelligence. They're ahead of us. They've proven it. And only one simple reason. They can fly in space and we can't.